Hello, welcome to this class. All right, so today's class is Befriending the Inner Critic. And I want to just name what we live with. And most of us live with this little voice in our head that is just commenting on us. It's judging us, it's criticizing us, it's evaluating us, it compares, and it also predicts what could go wrong. And it tells us how we should be better. You might hear the words of, you should do this, you could have done this. Okay? And for many people, that voice, it feels like it's just a part of it. It's just us, right? It's our own thinking, not a part of us, not a pattern, but we think that it's just us, okay? But today, I want to offer something gently to you. What if that voice is not who you are? Think about that for a second. What if that voice is not who you are? What if that voice was a part of you that was formed a long time ago, just so it could keep you safe? And what if the goal isn't to silence this part of ourself, this little voice in our head, but to just understand it? Okay, so developmentally, around age 5, more or less, something important happens to us. We begin to understand the world in dichotomies, in opposites. So the way that looks like to a 5-year-old is things are either good or bad, right or wrong, accepted or not accepted, loved or not loved. So just the world becomes very black and white. And at that age, we don't have the capacity to contextualize things. Okay, so that's why it's very opposites, very black and white, very accepted, rejected, loved, unloved. So when something is said or felt, we take it in as truth. So if a caregiver says to you, if you eat that, you'll get fat, we don't hear concern. We hear fat is bad. I must never be bad. If a teacher says, you should already know this, we don't hear stress. We hear, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. And if we sense any tension from a caregiver when we cry, we don't think, maybe they're overwhelmed. No, we think my feelings are too much. And so something begins to form. A voice that says, don't mess up. Don't be too much. Be better. Try harder. Stay small and just stay safe. So this is how the inner critic forms. Okay? And it's not as cruelty. This inner critic, this part of us isn't formed to punish us. It's actually formed to keep us safe. It's survival adaptation. And it's very intelligent. It learned to keep us safe at that time of our lives. But what happens is, as we grow older in our 20s, 30s, 40s, even 70s, we don't realize that it's just a pattern. It's a part of us. All right, so previously I've spoken about in parts work, IFS, which stands for internal family systems, this internal family that's going on within us. I spoke about it in a couple of previous talks. So in this parts-based work, the inner critic is often understood as a manager. It's a protective part of us. And its role is prevention. Okay? It tries to organize your life in ways that avoid pain. It thinks that if it criticizes you first, no one else will. If it pushes you to be perfect, maybe you won't be rejected. And if it anticipates shame, maybe you can stay one step ahead of it. So the critic believes, if I manage this well enough, you won't get hurt. But beneath that voice, I was just talking to my son about this today. Beneath that protective layer, that prevention, that protector, the inner critic, beneath him or her is fear. Okay, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of being seen and not being accepted. And because this part of us formed so early, it doesn't feel like a part of us. It feels like you. But as you begin to slow down, you might start to notice something. The tone. Is the tone warm or is it sharp? Is it steady or is it urgent? Is it wise or is it punishing? And as you notice the tone, I invite you to just take a moment to feel it in the body. Does your chest tighten? Does your stomach drop or tighten? I feel my fear sits in my stomach and it's like a knot. So what does this tone feel like to you? The body always tells you how the voice is landing. And the reason why we don't notice it sometimes, I met someone in just a class recently that never knew they had an inner critic. Because the inner critic often, it just becomes embedded into our identity. It sounds like, I should be further by now. Why am I like this? Other people are better. I'm too sensitive. I'm too much. Or maybe I'm not enough. There's so many ways and so many different things this voice says. And when a voice has been with us for so long, we stop recognizing it as a voice. It becomes background noise. Something we don't question. But over time, what happens is that voice starts to shape how we see ourselves. And for many people, with that, self-compassion feels unfamiliar. And I'm right now working with this with my son. He's going to be 24 years old, and I'm working with this with him so much. But because this inner critic is so strong, and for most of us, self-compassion feels very unfamiliar, because the criticism has been our primary language inside. And that was a primary language for me most of my life. Probably why my son has it now. Okay, so the inner critic believes that shame will motivate you. If it pushes hard enough, you will improve. But shame doesn't create growth. Shame creates contraction. It creates hiding. It creates performance. And growth comes from something very different. It comes from safety. It comes from steadiness. And it comes from compassion, self-compassion. So remembering compassion and the self-compassion, compassion sometimes can feel like a big word, but I want to say it's this loving kindness towards self. Compassion is when we can see an old lady struggling to get across the street, right? We have this kindness towards her, and if we can, we want to help her cross the street. Okay, but this self-kindness is also, this self-compassion is also so important for ourselves. So it's not weakness, but it allows our nervous system to settle. And we're going to get a little deeper into that in the meditation, so it can have a better understanding for you, a more of a felt sense in the body. Okay, right now it's just talk. But when our nervous system can soften because we bring kindness to ourselves, to this part of ourself, then when the nervous system softens, something new can emerge. Okay, with this kindness, with this compassion, something new can emerge. Without compassion, awareness can actually become harmful. So this self-compassion, this compassion is a very huge key part in any of this part's work. And we're going to go deeper throughout this course. So when you start to see your patterns, but you attack yourself for them, that's not awakening. I'm dealing, like I said, I'm going to bring that up again. My son is going through something where he sees his inner critic telling him that he needs to get better, he needs to heal, he needs to break this pattern. And how many of you can resonate? I can resonate with that. But if we see a pattern, but then we're attacking ourselves for it, it's not awakening. There's not going to be growth. That's the critic wearing spiritual clothing. And I had someone do a meditation with that the other day where we brought this inner critic online. It's called Parts Work meditation. And we had 2 parts online that I brought up in this meditation. It's a very deep work. The inner critic part was very tight and it was a fist. But the vulnerable, fearful part was very open. Because this vulnerable part is open. It's our heart space. But that protector, the inner critic that says we should be better, improve, it's tight. Okay, so again, if we recognize a pattern, but we don't give ourselves kindness and compassion for it, it's not awakening. It's you're spiritually bypassing your work, your healing. All right? Because the critic can say, you should be healed by now. You should be doing different by now. Compassion says, you are still worthy. Even if you've made this mistake 10 times, you're still worthy. The critic says, you're behind. Compassion says, you're human. So just to share a brief story, and I've already shared a couple little stories throughout the talk, but again, for my life, for so much of my life, my inner critic was in charge, right? My inner critic was constantly judging everyone else, judging myself, push harder, be better, improve more, read more books, meditate more. And at the end of the day, I didn't truly become in this space where I can teach you. I didn't truly get into a place to heal until I really started bringing love and kindness and seeing myself as human and learning to love myself for exactly the imperfect ways that I am. Even as a teacher, making mistakes, sometimes getting into an argument with my own inner critic when I know all of this stuff. But again, the real work is presence. I see you. I see you want me to not make that mistake again. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. And we're going to jump into a meditation around this, okay? But just for you to have maybe just a little more understanding from my own story. So again, befriending the critic, what I just named, this is where the shift begins. We're not trying to eliminate this voice, this critic. We're not trying to push it away. We don't shame it, because that would just repeat the pattern. So instead, we turn towards it with curiosity, with steadiness, with compassion, and we begin to ask, what are you trying to protect me from? What do you think would happen if I stopped? And often, what we find is this critic is working very hard because it believes that everything depends on it. So befriending the inner critic might sound like exactly what I mentioned a little while ago, but whatever feels right in your own experience. But here's a few options I wrote down. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. And you don't have to do this alone anymore. This is where that compassion, that kindness begins. Not as something you force, but as something that naturally emerges when a part of you finally feels seen, finally feels understood. And this is not indulgence, it's leadership. It's the part of you that is aware. And you're just meeting that part of you that's afraid. So over time, something begins to shift. The critic doesn't disappear, but it softens, it relaxes, because it is no longer alone. So this week, I invite you, instead of trying to silence your inner critic, just begin to notice it gently, without judgment. When does it get loud? What triggers it? What tone does it use? Maybe even notice where you feel it in the body if you can. And then again, simply, gently, with curiosity, simply ask, what are you trying to protect me from? You don't need a perfect answer. Just asking the question begins to create space. And in that space, you are no longer the voice. You are aware of the voice. So to finalize, the goal is not to eliminate this inner critic. The goal is to no longer be ruled by it. to shift from I am this voice to a part of me is speaking. And in that space, something opens. More compassion, more choice, and more freedom. And slowly, a new relationship with yourself begins to form. Thank you for listening.